Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Sebastian from Necrophobic to talk about Dawn of the Damned, out October 9th on Century Media. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. The first question that I have for you is, how do you and the band, how do you guys approach the creative process behind putting a record like this together?
It starts with me writing most of the music at home. I work best on my own, so usually I find some kind of atmosphere or theme or something in my head that I just want to turn into a song. And then I work with this for a couple of days or up to a week or something. And then when I have a demo that kind of shows the direction I want the song to go, I show it to the other and I get their input. Sometimes I get riffs from them or things they want to change and so on. And then we work together back and forth on the net. Actually, we send files to each other. So we used to do a lot of work in the rehearsal space, but it's easier now with the technical recording possibilities of computers to actually show better ideas to each other. But we did not think much of doing a follow-up or how to work under when we got so good response for the last album. You just have to put that away and work as if it's your first album. You know, you just try and do your job.
Yeah, that way I'm assuming you can keep the work very fresh without taking anything that was done before into consideration and just approaching every record like if it's your first album.
Yeah. And we also approach the band like that. It's not like we sit and think that we have been a band for 30 years or so. We kind of say that this band that is doing this album was formed now. This is the individuals and the minds of us in this age coming together doing this. This is a new band. So I think that makes it easier to work honestly with what you want to do and with no pressure.
I felt that the structure on this album was very well balanced. It's very linear, very well balanced. The whole record is very cohesive. So it allows you to get engaged with the album. And while the songs may change on a track-by-track basis, the overall experience of the record feels similar from top to bottom, from the beginning all the way to the bottom. Do you see the overall experience and the overall structure of the record in the same way?
Maybe. I mean, it's a concept album. It follows a storyline, so it's important that the songs tells the story and weaves the whole album as a whole together. I think the riffs vary a lot. There's a lot of variety on this album, but it has. When I wrote the riffs, I kind of wanted to take the listener on a journey, like a dream-like state to follow from the first intro to the last song. So it was kind of important to not make it many different dreams or many different storylines. So it should cling together as a movie or something like that.
Yeah, and the album, in my opinion, does have that ability. It's very fluid from the first song to the last song. When you start playing the record, you almost lose track of time, and next thing you know, you're at the end of the album.
Yeah,
and it has some cohesiveness to it, even though every song has its own DNA, if you will.
Yeah, I also think because I wrote almost everything myself on this, both lyrics and music. Anders wrote about 2 lyrics and Johan made a couple of riffs, but I was working so hard and I had this flow. So when I ended one song, I just started to work on the next, and I think all the songs were written within a year or something like that, and that's pretty unusual for Necrophobic. Usually we have a lot of writers from a vast period of time, but this time it was my work for 1 year, so it's very kept together, as you say.
Is it difficult for you to create an album that has that fluidity from track to track, but at the same time does not sound repetitive, that has its own interests song after song? Because you're trying to balance two worlds here. You're trying to make sure that the record stays and it plays out perfectly from the first song to the last song. But at the same time, you don't want every song to start to sound exactly the same as the previous track.
Exactly. I have a couple of there's like there are like 10 different Necrophobic songs throughout the career that, and I kind of decide that this song will be that, you know, and this song will fit in with like the dark side, or this will be a Nocturnal Silence song or something like that. So if I have a few songs with very straight blast beats and this very melodic minor chording, then I feel, then I must do a song like this to keep the record interesting. So I don't fill the record with the same kind of songs. I save those ideas for later albums or so. So I know what kind of chapters are needed to make an album like this.
If you look at the overall picture of this record and you look at the sound specifically, is there one element that to you feels like it's the most important element that allowed the whole record to work the way it does?
I'd say the guitar work on this album is what sticks out very much. I use the guitar in a total different way than I have done before. It has more layers. It has it's not shredding solos for the sake of shredding, but I think the solos and the melodies tells a story, and I haven't worked with the guitars this up front before. This has so much more of it, and it has so much more harmonies and stuff like that. So I think in the future people will say this is our guitar album, you know.
I feel the same way, because actually the next questions I had in mind to ask you was surrounding the guitars, because I really felt that this album, if there's one thing I take away from this album, is how good the overall guitar sound is, either be the riffs, the melodies, or the solos. When you look at the solos, I felt like you guys put on a clinic on this record. Just really extraordinary work as far as the guitar solos are concerned. They were not there just because you needed one there.
No.
They were there to really enhance what you guys were trying to achieve with the song.
Yeah. You know, I like guitar solos for the sake of guitar solos when I listen to bands. When I listen to Iron Maiden or Saxon or bands like that, I kind of look forward to the guitar solo, and it doesn't has to do that much with the song. But I think within, because it's rock and roll, you know, but within extreme metal, I find solos very often abrupt the songs. I love Morbid Angel, but sometimes Trey's solos seem out of place, or they take the song elsewhere. You are in this really good atmosphere in the song like Damnation, for example, and then the solo just interrupts it. And maybe that's what they want to achieve, to be bounced between the elements. But when I listen to extreme metal, I kind of like the solos that fits the song and tells the story. I very often think of Over the Wall with Testament. It was one of the first thrash metal songs I really liked, and that solo has this strong melody line which is triumphant, and with the video, have you seen the video of that Over the Wall with Testament? And they kind of break loose, and this solo is so triumphant, like celebrating their success of getting out of there. You know, it's really in place, and he's a fantastic player, but the solo fits the song so well. So I always think, how can I do a solo like the Over the Wall solo? How can I make it fit like that? You know.
I thought on this record you took, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt listening to the solos on this album, I felt like you took a very interesting approach. The solo either played off the atmosphere that the track had, so it almost made the atmosphere of the track more cinematic, or you took whatever the song was giving you, either be heaviness or melody, and you took a portion of the song that had that melody or that had that heaviness, and you incorporated that into the solo. So the solo extended the song. It didn't break the song, it extended the song. You see it
exactly. That way? I see it that way, absolutely. I just think the solos are like you say, an exaggerated version of the song. You know, again, as a reference, you have a Twisted Sister and We're Not Gonna Take It, where the solo does the exact melody line of the verse or the chorus. You know, it does nothing new, but it still just exaggerates the melody. And I kind of do that. I take the whole atmosphere and just put in another gear, you know.
Was there a song that gave you perhaps a little bit more difficulties in narrowing it out and finalizing it, and you even perhaps thought about like just trashing it completely because it was driving you nuts?
Yes, the song "The Shadows" was a challenge, to say the least. It's probably the most heavy metal-like song we have ever done. It's based around one drum pattern only. It's this double bass drive, like in Motorhead's Overkill. You know, it's just double drive from the start to the finish. And I wanted to see if we could do something repetitive like that, interesting within this more of black metal genre. You know, this is a heavy metal thing to do, to use the double bass like that. But for me, it was an experiment. And can I do this? But at the same time, because I kept the typical tempo of the 80s, which are not like blasting fast, it gets a really good headbanging drive, but it also sounds very commercial, you know, and writing riffs and trying it to not be like wimped out or too commercial. You know, when I heard it, I was afraid to play it to the others in the band. I thought they would say, you have become a poser, you're fucking crazy, you quit the band or something. But they actually loved it, and it was a new take for us. And I wouldn't like a full album with songs like that, but as one song that sticks out, it was a very interesting but scary experiment. Actually, I'm still waiting for the doom from the fans about these songs. If they say Sebastian has softened or something, we'll see about that.
You touched on the drums. I want to ask you about the drums. I also want to ask you a little bit about the vocals, but I want to ask you about the drums because listening to the album, I felt that the drums had two speeds, heavy and heavier. That was the only way that they came at me. They always seemed to like either sound very heavy or sound even heavier. Do you feel like the drums on this album gave you guys the perfect foundation in order for you to then build everything upon it and allow the guitars to be as diverse as they are?
Absolutely. I mean, Joachim that plays the drums, he's a little bit like Dave Holland of Judas Priest. He doesn't do that much. He just keeps the pace, and he's a strong foundation for us to build on. And since he's not showing off or doing all these kinds of fills or stops or stuff, then I can do whatever I like on the guitars because it will not interfere with the drums. You know, I have so much space to do. Some other bands with really technical drummers kind of do it the other way. I usually say 1349, the Norwegian band, is a good example of a fantastic drummer and guitar players that are also good, but they are holding the riffs back. You know,
the drums, there's no room for them.
There's no room for them. So it's the drum that gets the attention from the listener, and of course that was Frost. So he deserves that attention. But I think
he deserves the attention.
Yeah, but in this band, Joachim doesn't want that. He doesn't like to show off, and maybe I'm more of the attention guy then, so I can do whatever I like over this. But it works fine, and I think harmonically we have an advantage over many bands because this gives us a lot of space to build the atmosphere and do things on, you know.
Yeah, it does give you guys a lot of room. Like it almost becomes that you can take any song anywhere you want because you're not bounded by the boundaries that the drums are giving you. The drums are there to give you, it's like building a house, right? They're giving you the foundation, but the size of the house and how wide the house goes, that's really up to you and the guitars, because the drums are just there to kind of hold you up.
Yeah, I see it like that. Absolutely.
I want to touch on the vocals a little bit because I felt that the vocals were very, like, as I'm listening to the album, we already touched on this. The guitars are very dynamic. They're very fluid, filled with life from song to song. And I felt that the vocals were pretty much the glue that held everything together because they were strong, but they were very consistent from the top to the bottom. There's not a lot of variations. Was it important when you're putting an album like this together that is this rich as far as the guitar sound is concerned to have the vocals a little bit more centered?
It's funny that you say that, because we actually aimed for the opposite. You know, when Anders sang on the Nocturnal Silence back in 1994, he used the typical death metal grunts more or less during the whole album. But this time he actually worked with like 3 or 4 or 5 different voices, but they are like ambient sounds in the background. If you listen to this album with your headphones on, you will realize there's new voices, there's new things in the background happening all the time. But the mix of the main vocals is very consistent, as you say, and it's a very, I think it's a very powerful mix, maybe a bit compressed or so, which makes maybe the variations less noticeable, you know.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, I felt that the overall, if I'm looking at the overall tracks, the predominant vocal tracks is very consistent. And then behind those tracks, you definitely have a lot of elements that create atmosphere, more so than coming across as almost like vocals. They're almost used more as an instrument that adds atmosphere to the overall track.
Absolutely. That's right.
I want to ask you about 2 of my favorite songs on the album. I really like this album top to bottom. It was really hard to pick favorite songs. But the moment I listened to the record the first time, there was 2 songs that immediately jumped at me. And the first one is Darkness Be My Guide. And I love how the intro really works well with this track. It's almost becomes like they're part A and part B. They're just like kind of together. How did you put that song together?
I wrote it as a whole with the intro. The intro and the song Darkness Be My Guide was the same track from the beginning. The idea I had was that I didn't want to start this album as easy as the previous album. Mark of the Necrogram have a kind of a hit song at first. It's very easy, likable melody, and it's very direct. And I felt that we will start with a more epic song this time. We will demand the listener's attention, that the listener must take his time to get into this. But then in the end, we divided the intro and the song as 2 parts. But as you say, it's really one theme. It's very much together.
What was the decision behind dividing it? Because to me, my concern is this: I'm listening to the album, so I get to listen to it in sequence. But if you're listening to it on Spotify or whatever the case might be, you're gonna miss out on that intro, and that intro makes Darkness Be My Guide so much bigger. It makes it so much more powerful. So what was the decision behind breaking it apart?
I think that's. I mean, as a musician or an artist or a creator of art, you don't always think about how to make it commercial. You know, if it was up to me, it could have been 1 song on the whole album. You know, but since we're actually out in the commercial market and we're working with a record label, and they kind of want. And it's a kind of a given structure, you know. You have the intro and you have the songs, and you don't open an album with a 10-minute song. It's stuff like that really, if you were an independent small label, you can do whatever you like. But when you're on a big label, you more or less play by the rules. And if they want to cut between the intro and the song, that's what you do, you know. But as you say, it should be a whole song. Absolutely.
I can see, like, for a listener picking up the album and looking at the opening track, or somebody who's not necessarily a fan, who's looking more from a business perspective and looking at a 10-minute song, that's probably a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. I can see it from that perspective, but for me, from the listener, from a fan's perspective, they belong together.
Yeah, but I mean, also, it's not called the intro. It's called Aphelion for a reason. That it should not be something you automatically skip, you know. And as it starts with this naked guitar and not with ambient sounds or a thunderstorm and stuff like that. I don't think the listener immediately will hit the next button, you know. But you know, when if I listen to something on Spotify and I hear ambient synthesizers and clockwork in the back, then it's next. You know, this is too typical. This is an intro. I don't care. I want the action, you know. But I hope the build of this song can fool the audience to actually listen through it, you know.
The other song I want to ask you about is Dawn of the Damned. It has a great intro. It feels like it's such a somber, as far as the mood is concerned, it creates a very somber mood. How did you put together this track?
That was kind of odd track, actually. I felt all the way up till we recorded it that it was maybe too weak for the album. Actually, it was. It's built around this Oriental theme. It's a Phrygian scale. It sounds like something from a little bit Persian or you know, but. I think I just wanted to do something extreme on the guitar for the intro. The acoustic intro is
it's beautiful.
It's very tricky to play, and I think that's the kind of riff you do because you try to play something as complicated as you can, and out comes something you didn't realize that you could play. You know, so that whole song more or less are. It's the joy of riffing. It's the joy of playing guitar. But I didn't think that much of atmosphere in that song. But then comes the solo part, and after the first chorus, this whole middle part of the song, where I realized we need more atmosphere to make the song fit on the album. So that's it's maybe the most epic part of the whole album, I think, when it goes into the guitar solo stuff there. So it's two worlds in that song.
Yeah, but it's magnificent. I mean, the intro is what sold me on the song, to be honest with you.
That's cool.
The moment that I heard that intro, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those songs that I'm just going to get glued to it.
Yeah.
This is going to have great, because you cannot start the song with that kind of guitar and then not deliver for the rest of the track. You know what I mean? You cannot set expectations very high.
But the thing is, I have no idea how to play that, you know, because when I lay down the guitars for the intro, it was on the first demo I did on the song. It was on another computer, and in the end, when we were going to record the album, all I had was like a wave file of that, and I couldn't analyze what I had been playing. It's two guitars and a bass, but I cannot tell who plays what, you know. So we just that is actually my sketch that is on the album. That's my first attempt of doing something, and I will probably never be able to play that again, you know.
Oh wow, that's incredible. So I guess that song is not going to make it to the live set.
Sometimes you do things like that. You put on a backing track to start the song because you want the exact same sound and stuff like that. It's done with effect. So of course we can play it live, but we do the intro from front of house, you know.
Do you have a favorite track on this album? Perhaps that's a difficult question to ask, because I'm sure you look at the record as your baby, so you're going to like every single song. But is there a favorite one that speaks out to you?
I'd say at first it was the Infernal Depths of Eternity. That's the only song where both me and Johan and Anders wrote the music together. When it was written, it was, I think, maybe the last song we wrote for the album. Then I felt my career is over. I can never top this. I just told the others we have no band anymore. It's no idea. This was the last song. It closes the chapter. Goodbye. Take care. Let's go home. But that was the feeling when we did it. But now, when listening to the album, I can see the strength of the other songs, and I think The Return of a Long Lost Soul is probably the one that I have spun the most in my stereo. I think it's interesting because it doesn't follow the rules of a Necrophobic song. It doesn't have a real chorus. It's not there's no riffs coming back. It's just a journey from the beginning to the end. And for the first time, I managed to get like a 2-minute guitar solo duel at the end. You know, Joachim, our drummer, who's really our boss, he doesn't like that kind of stuff. He still thinks, that's guitar solo. But it was like, at once in my life, I want to have that kind of epic ending. You know, that's something you would find on a Neil Young song, or you know, the Guitar Heroes would end songs like that, and I felt that is the song to do. Like, let's end it with several minutes of just guitar geek stuff, you know.
I personally, I love it. It has like a little bit of an old school feel to it, because in modern albums now, you really don't see that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, but we're not modern people, you know.
That's true. That's true.
And we kind of just do whatever we like, and if people like it, that's fine. But to be honest, we have been working in the underground for 28 years, and with Mark of the Necrogram, we just got our heads over the water surface. You know, it's the first time we have reached a bigger audience. It's the first time that we have this many interviews and starting to get the good slots at the festival. But you know, for the rest of the career, we have been able to do whatever we like, because we have not made any money. We have not had anything to prove, but to do this to ourselves because we like it, you know. And I'm so happy that we were still able on this album, after the commercial success with Mark of the Necrogram, that we were able to keep that cool, that we were able to stay in the underground feeling that we will still do whatever we like. We don't have to make hits. We don't have to follow up the success of Tsar Bomba from the last album. We let's just do what we have always done, and I'm happy we managed to do that, because I think the result is better if we do what we want, you know.
Last question for you. When you look at this album now, perhaps a little bit more from the distance, because when you're recording the album, perhaps it's hard to see the forest from the trees. But now that you've had time to digest the record, where does this album stack for you amongst all the records that you've worked on? What's
different from this one, or
yeah, what comes out of this one that makes this one perhaps more special?
For me, it's both a good thing and a sad thing. You know, I was working on this so much alone, since I did both the music and the lyrics. I got full control of it. As you say, the album is very fluid from the first beginning. That's very different for album that I did this work by myself. But that is also something that I miss. You know, even if the result was very good, I can, when I hear this album, I miss the early days when we all contributed with ideas, and maybe the result was a bit like riff Lego, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I put your stuff together with my stuff. Oh, fine. I think this album is better, but I can miss the kind of, what do you say, brotherhood or something you get from doing it together. So it's both a good feeling, but also a sad feeling, I think, overall from this album.
I love your thing, riff Legos. I've never heard that before. I'm going to use that one.
But it really explains, you know.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I love it. I just had never heard it before, so I'm going to use it for sure.
Yeah, sure, do
it. Sebastian, I want to thank you for your time today. Best of luck with the release. It's coming out on Century Media, Dawn of the Damned. Absolutely amazing record. Once again, best of luck with the release. All the best for you and the guys, and stay safe out there.
Thank you very much. Take care, man.
Take care.
Okay, bye.